So, Alexej, thank you for joining me today as the founder and CEO of Alphagreen. Now, before we get started, could you give me a little bit and everyone else a bit of background on what exactly you guys are doing at the moment in the market?
So Alphagreen is Europe's leading CBD marketplace, and our goal is to be a global platform for alternative healthcare products. And by platform, I don't only mean a marketplace, but also a strong tech-enabled services element, which increases the value for the brands on our marketplace and also for shops who use our marketplace to buy directly from brands.
Could you give everybody a little bit of background on where your expertise comes from and how in the world you ended in the world of CBD and cannabis?
So yeah, as you rightly said, the last 10 years I worked in finance, and the majority of that in private equity and also in venture capital. Actually, when I was in venture capital, running the division for family office, I met more than 300 tech companies and invested in a bunch of them, invested also in a lot of the VC funds in London. And that experience gave me a lot of the kind of entrepreneurial let's say experience because it was really building a business from scratch as well. But it also gave me a lot of insights on how difficult it is to be an entrepreneur and how difficult it is to build a big business. And so I had the chance to meet so many different entrepreneurs and learn from them as well. I've been looking at cannabis more as a hobby, investing in various stocks in the cannabis space and seeing how big the space can get.
Yeah.
And so I then also thought, okay, maybe I launch an own fund in this space. And so I spent a month in Canada and California talking to more than 50 companies there and realizing ultimately that, okay, there are actually great companies out there, extremely overvalued. And there is really a need for a marketplace and some sort of European platform to attack that space from that angle. And so that was really the kind of catalyst for me to say, hey, I'm going to leave finance and I'm going to jump into this deep end and try my own thing.
And let's talk about that a little bit, because it's no surprise that particularly in the state of California, the cannabis market is massively used because there's this consensus that it's completely normal. You've got soccer moms going into supermarkets and, buying whatever they buy. How have you seen a change in the cultural shift in Europe towards the legalization and everyday use of CBD and cannabis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very good question. So if you look at the US, the space evolved from really a cannabis culture and THC to CBD. Whereas if you look at Europe, it was always some sort of like in the medical area and medical cannabis. And then it was much more about self-care and wellness. And that's where the CBD really started in Europe. And so even though we are kind of like at the same, let's say, stage, both when you look at the US, Canada, and Europe, the starting points were very different. And so I think Europe has to still do a few things which maybe the US does already, including legalization of the THC products as well. But in terms of CBD, Europe has actually a really huge product innovation and product diversity.
As quite a somewhat early stage company, how have you found the difficulties of growing and, growing generally in this kind of global market as well as within the UK?
Yeah, so it is a global space. So, and it's still quite a small space in terms of the amount of people involved. It's of course a big space in the sense how much money is being spent in CBD or cannabis in general, and how fast it's growing. But in terms of the actual ecosystem and the players, everybody knows everybody. So it's very easy for you to just onboard a brand in the US and start selling it in Europe as well, and vice versa. Because most of our content is in English and we have US traffic now, we do see customers from New Zealand, from the US buying products from Europe with Alphagreen's help as well. So it just came very natural.
there's always that question of like, when you're building a marketplace, who do you focus on, the end businesses or the providers or the consumers? And so when you started this, were you doing both at parallel, or did you start with one and then the other came naturally?
So the idea was to provide a curated experience for customers and give them access to the best products possible.
Yeah.
So the idea was really to be a great marketplace for customers. Of course, how do you get customers if you don't have brands? And how do you get brands if you have no customers? And I was really lucky because I've been talking to so many companies as an investor. I just told a lot of these brands, okay, I changed my mind. I'm not going to be an investor anymore. Instead, I'm doing this marketplace in Europe. Would you like to onboard as a brand? And because they had a good conversation with me before, they said, yeah, sure. And of course, everybody wants volume, everybody wants traffic. And so they really gave me, let's say, the benefit of the doubt or whatever. They believed in me for me to bring them some traffic and some sales down the line. So they all onboarded. And with a few really good brands, we started getting first customers as well. That led us then, of course, to get more brands. And so then the network effect really started happening.
How long did it take, and what methods did you focus on at the beginning to obtain those customers in terms of marketing?
Incorporated in October 2019. We launched the first almost like landing page with some text in November. We onboarded more brands in December. And then really January, February, March, we've just been focusing a lot on SEO and just hitting a lot of content in lots of different resources, including Medium. In fact, we launched our Medium blog before we launched our website, I think, or like literally like at the same time. So we were publishing a lot of content in Medium. And so for the first 4 months, we didn't have much traffic, and I was just onboarding brands who I knew from before, or kind of like friends of brands, without really showing them any traffic. And then only in April, that's when we started to really have organic sales. Of course, we had some sales before in terms of course, like an investor buys something or a friend buys something. Yeah. But we've been really not trying to focus on direct marketing, and instead we've just been keeping being patient and waiting for Google to give us traffic and waiting to be highly ranked. And so the first results really came after 4 months, and now it's exponential. So in May, we passed 1 million impressions. In June, we passed already 2 million impressions. We now have more than 3,000 unique visitors in early June. We obviously took our time to get there, but it's very sustainable. And so I would suggest the same strategy to any marketplace out there as well, even if they're not operating in kind of like a high risk area, because ultimately if you have a lot of organic content and organic traffic, you can optimize your paid traffic in a much better way and make the kind of LTV CAC ratio much better actually.
100%. I think that leads us on to kind of the more interesting question of, how did the business model actually develop over time, as you started on marketplace and then it became a platform in the last 3 months?
The first business model was marketplace, B2C, and also a German subsidiary to distribute medical cannabis into Germany. We then in January realized, okay, we have so many cool products and lots of shops are approaching us to buy from brands directly using Alphagreen. And there is a really good example in the US called LeafLink, who did a marketplace for dispensaries to buy weed from producers directly. And so we said, okay, actually, we have everything we need. We just need to collect wholesale pricing for various brands. And voila, we have a B2B marketplace as well. So that was the first, let's say, extension to the business. But then the key, let's say, development was when the pandemic happened and I realized the German business will take longer to develop. However, I do want to see good revenue numbers and also at some point, good cash flow. And that led me to say, okay, what can I offer with the resources I have to make money? And so a lot of brands have been approaching us to get help on the SEO and to advise them on kind of e-commerce strategies. And so we said, okay, actually we can systematically increase our resources on the SEO front to then provide that as a service for companies as well. And we then got straight away 4 brands to pay as a recurring fee. And that led then to the realization that we can actually launch other services where there are pain points for brands and help them. And so business now evolved to a very similar, let's say, structure and model to the Hut Group in the beauty industry, and they own myprotein.com. And the way they operate is they have some marketplaces, they have some brands, but a key part of their business is they are having this ingenuity tech platform, which they use to roll out brands for other big companies like Nestle, for example. And so we said, okay, we know all the pain points now in cannabis.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that a little bit because it's so, easy said than done. Oh yeah, we know the space, you developed all these things. We found the pain points. And although maybe you have the knowledge, it's a capacity issue of focusing on the actual business and still providing consulting advice and building stuff for, brands that you work with. And how, when you're thinking about your week and the team and your resources, how do you divide that time? Or is it a matter of hiring more people to stream all of that out?
Sure. So when you think, for example, consulting, we actually do not consult companies. Instead, what we say, okay, this is what we're going to deliver. And you have 1 hour in that package with us to have a call with us to ask us any questions you have. And by doing that and by providing basically a service which is really tech enabled and is therefore scalable, limits us to not giving more time to a brand than we initially planned. And of course, we're there to check the quality of the work. But because we've done it for Alphagreen already, we are not really inventing something new. We're just replicating what we did for us. And so it's much easier to scale than, for example, a pure consulting service indeed. Yeah. Then later on, we said in terms of the marketplace and who is the marketplace built for. Again, it's still built for the customers, but of course we do think more and more now about the other, let's say, players in the ecosystem and how we can combine that whole space and again, what kind of network effects we can leverage.
What has been your biggest surprise in terms of really looking at your customer spread and thinking, that's a market I didn't even think I would target at all?
So our average basket value is 60 pounds right now. So that gives you already the type of, let's say, social segment, which actually buys CBD products, because ultimately you're paying literally 60 pounds or 90 pounds sometimes for a 10 milliliter bottle of CBD oil, which lasts you a maximum of 1 month. So the segment most keen in CBD, it's to be honest, it's very difficult to say. It's really 50-50 between female and male.
Yeah.
It's, I would say, of course, on the online front, more geared towards the 20 to 45-year-olds. But you can actually see a lot of the older population to also buy CBD products because, of course, cannabis has a very strong reputation to be a really good product to solve pain and chronic pain issues.
Yeah.
And especially if people don't want to go to the doctor to get a prescription for medical cannabis, which in the UK, for example, is extremely hard to do still, they then fall back on CBD, high percentage CBD products. And so really the customer group is across the whole space.
That is happening, is this like normalization. If you look at how many CBD companies have come up, but also how many are shams. And I think that's something that I do want to talk to you about is the process of testing, that the vendors that are on your site are not just, they've used the CBD in the wrong way, or it's not something that absorbs, like it's completely, how do you assure that?
So again, the focus is very much in us believing that the testing laboratories do a good job in providing good tests. Of course, if they all don't do the job well, then we don't have anything. Then of course we can't do our job well either, because we rely on their proof and their stamp of approval.
How did you come to have, such a solid team, both on the content front and on the technical side?
So when I was in VC and private equity, I was doing various side hustles and trying to make it somehow. And so a lot of that was with Victor, who is my CTO. And so when we started thinking about, okay, who else should we hire as part of the founding team? The third person is a full stack developer who's like a really hardcore developer who has worked with Victor for the last 10 years and actually went to school together. So there was no real question who should be another person in tech. And then on the medical cannabis front, it was a pharmacist in Germany who played 10 years water polo with me in the same team. Again, I would say different to lots of other startups out there where you have the idea and then you really look for the team. The idea and the team was at the same time. And so I didn't really need to go out to find a founding team when I had the idea. Then the second layer of people, we basically hired people we knew. So again, the emphasis was very smart people and very hardworking people, because initially it's very difficult to know what function a person should be doing, because everybody is doing everything. And so what you really need is really intelligent people and hardworking people. And then only after that, we started saying, okay, well, we need a digital marketing person, or we need basically another business development person. And so we then said, okay, let's talk to our investors and let's talk to friends. And also, of course, we posted on LinkedIn and in universities. And what happened is a few recommendations came through. And then we had everybody who we hired after that, we basically had them to go through internships and then hired them after that by realizing, okay, they're very hardworking and strong, but also they came via recommendation. And right now, for example, we are hiring a lot of university grads and also placement year students. So right now, the focus kind of went from, okay, we've kind of built up the core and now we just need more people from the ground. And so that's what we're doing right now.
And then kind of the last question about your investors is how much advice you actually get from them. Because obviously you being an investor yourself, what is your relationship in terms of, that kind of how involved are they in the business? Because when you're an early stage founder, they're very involved. But when they know you, or they're a bit like, you're just an investment, we don't necessarily need the personal side as much.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it depends how much of the company you give away when you raise money. If you give away a lot, then investors will be involved a lot. Mm-hmm. I think it's very important for early stage companies to actually have the freedom to operate without anybody really, contributing too much from the investor side, because ultimately nobody really knows what's happening on the ground except the team. And also certain decisions just need to be done straight away without any formal board meetings or anything. So in that sense, there is no involvement from investors at all. Having said that, there are some investors who are extremely, extremely experienced in certain areas. So we have one investor, he was a VC himself. He then was an entrepreneur in the vitamin space. He's now again an investor. And it's a really interesting combination, again, investor and operator, plus that particular focus on consumers and vitamins as an operator is extremely valuable. So we ask him every 2 months to do a 2-3 hour workshop with us where we just have a bunch of questions we ask him, and then he basically provides us some input with.
But for you personally, as an investor and as a founder, what are you measuring the success of your company by?
One metric for us is really traffic. Are we seeing this 300% growth month by month we are seeing? And are we seeing it in the future as well? And if not, what is it that is slowing us down and what do we need to change?
Yeah.
And because if you have a lot of traffic, it doesn't really matter what your business model is. You can always get it right because you have the eyeballs. Whereas you can have the best business model ever, but if you don't have any traffic, nobody will know about your product. So traffic is really the core metric. And then of course it's really, okay, the sales we're making, are we making a good profit margin on that? How fast are we onboarding new brands? How fast are we rolling out new product features? How high is our conversion rate? But that's all secondary, right? I think the key metric is really for us all the time, okay, how are we doing on the traffic?
Your journey was a little bit different coming from an investment background, but let's talk a bit as to how important your personal reputation in your previous jobs was to you being able to secure investors for this current company.
Yeah, I was very lucky in the sense that I knew a lot of good angels already, and they knew me from investing on a quite successfully, and also just they knew me on a personal level, on a human level, and know that I'm very hardworking and very driven. So I think when I came with the idea of Alphagreen without a website to them, just kind of with a PowerPoint presentation, asking for a 5 million valuation, they knew that, okay, it's not a cheap valuation, but that person is really going away from a really well-paid job in finance to do it. And given what he's done before, the probability that he will be successful this time is quite high. So it was very important. It's almost like if you think about serial entrepreneurs, once they sell a business, the second time raising money for them is extremely easy.
Yeah.
And so of course it's not the same here because I didn't build a tech business in cannabis before, but there are some parallels. And then of course my team and my other co-founders are a very big element of that successful raise as well, with my CTO being a tech entrepreneur and who built 2 successful e-commerce businesses already. And so that added really to the credibility of the pitch.
Mm-hmm. And then you decided to use SeedLegals, which is really great for us, for someone who has expertise. But, how did you come across the platform? And then were you surprised, like pleasantly surprised when you used it and you saw that you could actually close your round on it?
So the first time I heard about SeedLegals was actually from a friend who invested in SeedLegals, and then followed by Index doing the round. And I saw lots of other legal tech businesses, and I know it's not easy to pull off something in this space. And so when I then logged in, I realized, okay, actually it is a really cool tool you built there, and the legal agreements are extremely, extremely professional and are quite flexible as well. And so I then basically said, okay, well, why should I pay a lot of money to a law firm who gives me with the legal content? They give me the legal content, but I still have to do a lot of the daily admin work. Whereas SeedLegals is really a service, and it's really a tool which saves me a lot of time on a daily basis. So I did my seed round, or like kind of first equity round with that. I then also did the whole SCIS, EIS process and passed the compliance as well. And your team helped me to pass it with HMRC as well. I then most recently issued also EMI options to employees, and did the whole valuation and the whole process around that. And then finally, of course, I use a lot of the agreements, right? NDAs, employment contracts, consulting contracts, to basically, make my life easier as well.
And when you sent this to your investors, because obviously they're all pretty, experienced investors, what was their reaction? Were they pretty like, okay, this was fine? Or But they're like, who are you using? Like, this document just came to me by email. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Some angel investors knew SeedLegals already, so they were fine. And then the other ones, again, like you don't really, you like as an entrepreneur, you try not to ask investors what they want, right? You tell them what there is, and that's pretty much it, right? If they want to get into the round, they accept it. So I think from that perspective, it was a bit easier. So I just told them, look, there's a really cool tech company out there, SeedLegals. We're using them. In fact, I recommend you using them for all your other businesses as well. So hopefully some investors sign up for SeedLegals after that as well, and force the companies to use that.
Did you feel like you were able to go to the team and ask, whoever you're working with, whether Itamar or anybody else, and get a response that you were comfortable with?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Itamar, super good guy, available 24/7. I have him on WhatsApp as well. So I'm a really bad customer. I email like at 3 a.m. But basically, yeah, great service. Absolutely. Megan, great job on the options. Matthew, extremely good on the compliance side and EIS, SAS. So yeah, everything was really dealt with extremely professional and pretty fast as well.
Because you did do the EMI option scheme, and it's something that we're trying to promote as something that's incredibly useful for companies, especially coming out of kind of a recession type period where you maybe have less cash flow. It's a great way to bring on very good employees for lower costs. When you do that, and as you are growing your team, how is managing your option scheme been through the platform?
Mm-hmm. So we try to actually give options to every core full-time employee because we want to align interests and to basically tell the employee that, look, we don't mind giving you options because we want you to be with Alphagreen for a long time. It's not because we give you options because we want to pay you less. We actually still pay well, and we give options because that's how you hire the best talent out there.
Team. Yeah. Actually, I don't have any more questions. I think I've drilled you quite deeply about the world of cannabis and Alphagreen. Is there anything else that you'd like to say in terms of launches that are coming for you guys, or advice that you would give to other founders?
Sure. Well, my core advice is stay resilient and work really hard and be patient, and try to hire best people. Even though you might not afford them initially, try to hire the best. And in terms of other marketplaces, it's not easy. So if you do a marketplace, try to pick a niche area which is growing extremely fast, and then it's possible. But again, you have to be patient.